let's see. Bam. There are 3 forms that I would like people that participated in the league to fill out. One of them, you don't have to have been in the league. So we have 1, the best map and feedback. So I already made notes of all of the feedback that I wanted to address. You know, I have that big list anyway. There's a lot of feedback that I put on there that I'll talk about later. But this is your last chance. I'll check it before I get to some of that stuff. I'll show the results and that kind of stuff on stream too. For you know, anything that's not the right in your answer, because you know, there's some of it that I'm sure some people don't actually want to be shown. Like if they say their name. So there's that one. There's the league general feedback, also for the people that played in the league. If you fill this one out, definitely read this. I'm gonna basically reiterate these 2 paragraphs for sure, because they're important suggestions that I plan to take in mind. And then I'll talk about this at the end. But yeah, a few questions, what people think about team sizes and stuff like that. And I will address any stuff that shows up at the end. And then the last one is, it's not specifically for people that were in the league. It was just anybody in the community. This one I put in the Dust Force Discord announcements for fun, including 1, there are 2 kinds of events that could possibly be on the horizon. You know, possibilities, gauging interest out there. And then things to do with this channel. So if people want to contribute in some way, let me know. All 3 of those forms are in Discords, specifically the League Announcements Discord or the Dust Force Announcement Discord channel. Cool. Hey, I already did the first item. Alright. So let me talk a little bit about the background of the league. We're just getting started. Let me... Okay. I don't know what I want on that other monitor yet. Postmortem is the best way to describe this. Okay. We had a good run. It was fun. We accomplished some goals better than others. So some of these goals are a little bit loftier than others. Specifically, I wanted to be able to include everybody. You know, just be flexible with anyone that wanted to join, even if they can't participate much. And that's really hard to combine with being actually competitive as well, because like some people are just not going to be competing as much as others. Some people are only going to play a few maps each week, stuff like that. It's going to not be too balanced in that regard. And like we're just accepting that for what it is. We're not planning like we're not intending a fully competitive kind of environment. But with that said, for the people that do want to compete, we're going to encourage that competition. So on that leaderboard, it's going to be a good way of measuring up against people that are also active. So some people grinded a lot more than others. It worked out really well for those people. They were able to compete in a cool new way. The level competition itself, competition on each individual level, was something that you don't normally see on customs. So we definitely accomplished part of that goal. Valuing different types of players. Easy examples are SS any percent and map making through map voting. It didn't accomplish those as well as we could have because of the point system, but I'll get to the challenges later with the point system. And then I really wanted teams to create new maps each week, and I just wrote a little paragraph about this one because it deserves the most detail. So hopefully you guys have already been reading this, but I'm just gonna read it aloud for fun. Requiring teams to also create maps was probably the idea that made the league happen at all. At first, it guarantees new maps each week. In teams, we can encourage new map makers to try out new stuff in an environment where they have help. Because of the weekly grind and a week being short, maps were not asked to be polished and were asked to be judged based on gameplay. This week-long scenario in which you also make maps was not supposed to be normal or relaxed for map makers, but you do have team members to make up for that. So, let's give map makers a new kind of challenge with some unique themes and put some fun pressure on them. Yeah, anybody can join in the call. I do have a bunch of stuff that, like the first half of these notes, I'm just gonna say like a few sentences on each little thing. And then when I get to about the middle, then it'll make a lot more sense for people to join in. But like the first part, the summary stuff, you can definitely join, but don't speak up too much if I'm on a roll, I guess. I really don't mind being interrupted as far as this is concerned, because otherwise it's just gonna be me talking for like over an hour. So yeah, those are the goals that we were looking at. I do not feel like we got this across, like what the intent was for map making very well. Like, some of the pieces were there, but I didn't have this paragraph in the information in these kinds of words. A lot of map makers felt the pressure 100%, and a lot of the responses from them that I saw, not sure if that's like a vocal minority or not, were more on the negative side in terms of like, oh my god, I was pressured all of a sudden, like that's not enough time to make maps, stuff like that, which is fair. That kind of response is valid, but I also wanted them to feel that pressure and actually just accept it. That's the challenge of the league for map makers. But the thing is, you don't have to clarify yourselves as map makers. You're on a whole team, and you can get your team involved. So that was part of the intent. The teams create new maps each week. So it guarantees all these kinds of maps are going to happen, and we're not looking for the best kinds of maps anyway. So I tried to make it clear at the beginning of the league I didn't want to really focus on that quality. But, it's hard for map makers to be used to that. It's new. So with this in mind, there were certain challenges based on the format that we ended up going with, which was, when I say format, I'm referring to how the I'll skip a little bit ahead, but actually I'll stay here because I like the beginning. The format refers to 1, the open draft and teams model, so how the teams were chosen, what kind of teams they were, and also the weekly cycle, how everything was scored, basically everything put together. There are a lot of different ways we could have done it. We did think about other ideas. At the beginning, we were originally thinking about, do we want people to sign up together with their friends, or do we want to do a draft? And we went back and forth with each other. There are 6 organizers that were in most of the early discussions. That's me, Avenged isn't here, Miles, JVC, Skyhawk, and Dello. Skyhawk handled most of the map upload stuff, some of that map related, things he has experience with CMR. Delo started on the Nexus that will eventually finish. A lot of random little things were covered by everybody, though. So yeah, the teams themselves were very dependent on the captains, and we saw that immediately with how the captains differed in how they chose to draft. If people were able to sign up with their friends, then that's cool. But we tried to balance it out a little differently. We thought having a draft would be fun. And it's fun to have those kinds of discussions on stream. It being the first time something like this happened, it made it a little awkward, I think, for some of the people involved, because they didn't really know what to expect. And that's fair, because, well, what kind of expectations are there really? It's hard to go into one of those kinds of things very confident, but people had fun. That's good. But because of that, no matter what, we're expecting there to be some imbalance in teams. So can't really avoid that. Sniping. This is the first time there's been like a deadline on grinds or leaderboards in a meaningful kind of manner, as far as I know. This is a very unique kind of format where everything just ends at the end of a week. So there are gonna be some people that hide strats. In theory, there could be. And there was only one instance where that ended up being the case. Let's see if it's still there. But on the first week, we had a last-minute snipe by Bobma. And this was the only one that ended up mattering. So it ended up being just a different super strat right there at the end. So now people that want to hide those strats are not normally able to do it, and they'll just show up on the leaderboard anyway. So you can still copy. So it's hard to actually, it's hard to justify playing the level early and then grinding early, but then you're just a target for other people. Streaming is definitely something that I wanted people to still want to do, but not everybody wants to share their strats, perhaps. So I wasn't sure in the beginning how much we were going to see any top players hold on to strats. There's definitely a lot of cool potential because this is the only time that you can do this kind of thing. So if anyone wanted to save strats for the end, they could, and fortunately there were no problems. But if it ended up being a problem, then we would have enforced you can't just be pausing at the end kind of thing and then wait for 40 minutes. Waiting for an extended period of time. But yeah, if people like Fishy and me and Camel were all doing it for the top level, and it just kind of relied on it, then I definitely want to put the foot down. So it's a cool idea, but I wasn't sure how cool it could possibly have been. Valuing map makers.
Feeling,
Hey, what's up?
Hey, I'm just thinking about sniping and hiding strats. I think the only way to combat that would be to have a hidden leaderboard or something for the entire week, but that would also a lot of people wouldn't enjoy that, so I think it's hard to work against.
Yeah, there are definitely ways to do that, and I actually have that later on. I'm going a little more in depth in some of this stuff at first, when I actually have notes on like all this later. This is more like a pre-summary. But yeah, definitely. So as for valuing map makers, it was challenging to think of ways to encourage map making. So, lower music. Okay. Where'd it go? Right. That's a little better. Discord is actually high enough. I'm pretty confident. Okay. So, although having teams make maps was part of the premise that made it happen, another really good thing that came together was the idea of voting for a best map each week and then giving some kind of reward. So, adding points and giving them the ability to choose the theme from a prompt, or however we would end up doing that, that ended up being something that really helped out there. The points, you know, they don't really matter that much, and they really didn't matter much because it was such a small, insignificant amount. But, you know, it was hard to know in advance how it was going to be balanced. Valuing the bottom tier players, that was a challenge. We didn't know if we wanted to address how they could still compete with each other. We didn't want to make them feel left out in the draft because they were picked at the end also. Didn't end up doing anything too special as far as that's concerned, but the point system, you know, it made it like this goes straight into the point system, honestly. Basically, part of the point system's problem was that we tried to address that in a very specific way, and that was every single point, every single rank mattered. Let me get the leaderboard up. Okay. So, on the leaderboard for each week, next to the rank, there's the shown amount of points it's worth. And if you do the math out, you can pretty easily tell that, hey, look, it's a one per rank, and then a +1 bonus for each tier that you go up. But we score a lot of players because there are a lot of players in there. And this was the reasoning behind that. It had to do with trying to value the bottom half of players and make them feel like they're still competing on that level. And internally, the organizers had quite a discussion on how much we wanted to do some kind of model like this, and you know, more people ended up going with this, and it's fine. It's what we committed to. I'm glad that we committed to it. But honestly, there were a lot of problems with this structure. So specifically because there were so many things, there are so many points, then you know, it just overvalued all of the grinding. Like people that were able to play every single level, because every level counted, every leaderboard, all 12 of them, it ended up being so much more favoring towards those kinds of players. So when you look at the roster, let's sort by not tools. Okay. Sort by total. These players that are on the top, they had to grind the most. No, like there's no real exception to that. Being a top player and defending it does take a considerable amount of time, and there's going to be a pretty clear distinction between people that spent more time and then people that, like, you know, there are some people that didn't do anything certain weeks. And that's fine. There are some weeks that people could be busy. We allowed for it. We accepted it. Only one person was actually inactive, but there was no real need to officially drop them, technically, and that was Brio. But for the most part, it was you know, top players, but primarily active players on top. So the people that grind more get the most points. They're the ones that actually defend their ranks. Let's see. So initially, this point system was thought about when we were talking about, let's say, roughly half or a little bit more than half of the expected number of players. So instead of getting 60 something, honestly, going into the league, I had no idea what to expect for signups. It could have been like 20 to 40. And, you know, anything in there would have been fine with me. That's pretty much what I expected. So, because of that, and then continuing to keep that model after having a lot more players, it kind of exacerbated the problem. So, we tried to make even the lower tier level players, we tried to make them count and compete amongst themselves, but you still had to put everybody above them. So, you know, it's tricky because do the low level players still even matter technically? To an extent they do. When you think about the differences, so if you go back to the leaderboard, so the overall leaderboard, this is settled by differences of, you know, 1,000 plus between each ranks. The closest one being 2. Kind of surprising that there was one that close. Made up by the maps, you could say. The bonuses mattered here and only here. This one's also just not enough. So yeah, the bonuses mattered in one spot to actually change the difference. Pretty insignificant when you think about it. But we're talking about differences of 1,000 plus. Players, most players scored at least 1,000. You know, just over half. But when you've got like all these several hundred scoring players that put in varying amounts of time, then, you know, you have to add up a few of them to make a difference. So either the inactive or the you know, bottom level players, they don't really seem to contribute as much as, say, the 2,000 plus getters. But you could also argue that for these players, that's their responsibility. That's their role on the team. Having people like players that we know are really good that just weren't as active, like let's say Fresh into Pop, you know, they could score 1,000 more points, but didn't. It would have made a difference. Not having Fresh or Yoda around definitely made the competition between these two teams a little bit different. And it's hard for captains to know whether they're going to be active or not when they draft them. But ultimately, there are just so many points in the point system, and it was just worse because of how many more players were added. So because there's all that seeming focus on it, it seems like only those points matter. Like, it makes sense that that's what matters. But it just gave the wrong impression to some people. Like, hey, does what I do matter? Well, I don't know. Does it matter to you? You can try as hard as you want. Try to get better. So there are inherent problems with the point system, and they kind of go against the team feeling as a result. Because after all, it's all the points are just entirely individual, and it just adds it up. There's no like strategy. Another aspect of teams not feeling important. I mentioned here that the teams, some teams handled map making differently than others. I noticed. Some of them were good about grouping up and, you know, actually working on maps together. But that was what seemed like a minority. There was still a lot of issue with, like, some teams just kind of gave the map making responsibility to one or two people, different people each week. So they had to make 3 maps. All right, you are the 3 map makers. You're gonna make one this week. You're gonna make one this week, and so far, and so on. Yeah, definitely. I plan to do that as well. I'm gonna talk about solutions right after this section, actually, because the point system leads into why there's a time commitment issue, which leads into how you're supposed to address those kinds of problems. Let's see. Okay. So this is where some more speculation starts happening, but the most common complaint, the 2 complaints that you hear are there are too many maps and there's not enough time to make maps. And, you know, within a reason, that's totally within a reason, that kind of response. There's a lot going on every week. You had to grind everything and you still had to make maps, and it's a lot of maps to play. On top of that, some people aren't used to being bopped over and over for a whole week. Imagine being on such a competitive leaderboard, like one of the most consistent kinds of competitive scenarios that we could have over the course of a limited time span, where, you know, at the end of it, the leaderboard is frozen. There's gonna be some, you know, bop wars. It makes sense. Some people aren't able to retaliate. People aren't used to grinding that much. So it's a very harsh environment. Very competitive, potentially, depending on how much you want to put into it. And if you don't want to put into it as much as other people, you have to accept that they're just gonna bop you back. Whether they're, you know, as good as you or not, potentially. Yeah, and it's made a little bit worse by the possibility of being sniped. Because, like, you could try for a whole week, but then out of nowhere, just in the last few hours, you finally get bopped somewhere. I wouldn't call anyone actually, like, upset over it, but, you know, it's competitive. It's the only time we've done anything like this, other than the daily. And the daily is actually a really easy kind of thing to compare. So initially, you might think, all right, there are 6 maps and 7 days. Hey, wait a second, that's less effort to work than the daily. And then you just make the map on the 7th day. You know, just make the map the first day instead. You know, you don't have to take it anymore. You don't have to take it much differently in terms of like time commitment. than playing the daily. However, you should probably break up break it up from playing only one daily every day. Like just play a few maps each day, a little bit, and you can manage your time better than that. That's some good kind of advice to address this kind of scenario, but it wasn't possible for people to actually play that much, so that's fine. But I am definitely going to say that teams were not good about map making planning. Sure, there were definitely communication issues, which I'll definitely talk about later with the draft process. But when you know what the theme is on Saturday, and you have 7 days to make a map, and you have 8 people on your team, multiple people that can make a map that could all work together, then the ability to have a draft by Wednesday is pretty high, in my opinion. And I barely got half of the drafts most weeks by Wednesday. My team in particular was a very good example of handling it very poorly, because we were the most inactive team that had I didn't look at any of the team chats other than there were a couple of re-upload cases that I had to pop in there very briefly, but if I had to guess, my team was the least active just by chatting. So there's only, in our case, there was only one, well, there are 2 people that had map making experience, and that's Temp and Hadrian. And we had, for the first week, Hadrian and Temp both made map drafts. We preferred Temp's early, and then we didn't hear anything from Hadrian for a few days, so we just ended up going with Temp's anyway. But then Hadrian was busy for the rest of the league, so didn't really matter. And then Temp was busy for the rest of the league too, so even I had to help. Yeah, having that many people doesn't mean it gets made 8 times as fast. It means there are 8 times as many people that could work on a map. But I am 100% calling out every single team and that they did an awful job. There, I said it. I used the word awful again.
That also doesn't mean that 8 people are going to want to help make the map.
Yeah. Yeah, and I said that at the beginning of the league. I'm not expecting everybody to want to make maps, but it's a good environment for people that haven't made maps before to try making maps with other people on their team. I mean, there's literally no arguing this when I barely receive half of the map drafts over half of the way into the league each week. I do think that people should have been working on maps early in the week. This is entirely a in hindsight kind of thing. By the way, you can't really know this kind of stuff until you've tried it, and we've never tried it before. I wasn't expecting teams to be good about this kind of thing, but there were very few teams that were on top of this kind of thing, and good job to the people that were, definitely. But with that in mind, it's very demanding. Map making is obviously not easy. And you had so many other maps to play. It's fine. There are a lot of players. Speaking as a person with my entire map making career on Atlas. No Atlas account. Very very clear expectations from map makers. Anyway, though, let's talk about how we can address the common complaints. So let's talk about what happens if I make weeks longer. Actually, let me scroll back up and then read some of the longer paragraphs that I was talking through, just in case. We'll talk about the rewarding limited placements later. Yeah, and also people aren't used to collaborating on maps before, and I wanted them to, and it's hard to do that. I'm definitely trying to trigger map makers, by the way. I want them to actually have a problem with this and then fix it. Like, hope you guys understand that. I want you guys to try harder too. Like, part of the premise of this league is I'm trying to give a problem to map makers. I'm trying to make their lives harder. So, you know, the backlash it's accepted. I'm trying to trigger you guys. Please understand. Alright. So if there are longer weeks, there are different ways to do this kind of thing in the format. Let's just say weeks were 2 times as long. You know, rounds were 2 weeks. Okay, well, the better players are going to grind more. And they're gonna win more consistently. Hey, that's arguably better for competition, but it's gonna be so much more taxing on those players, or they'll just give up after a certain bit of time, and they'll just take like a week off in there, and they'll grind it at the end anyway. But then that's when the maps are gonna be finished too. So, you know, the maps are gonna be more polished, potentially too, but are they really? When they're CMRs, people don't actually spend, some people don't actually spend that much more time making a map compared to, say, the first week of the league. The quality of the maps for week 1, you know, when people didn't have to grind the practice week, on average was a lot better. Like, they were far more polished than I expected. And I mean that in a very negative way. I didn't want you guys to spend that much time focusing on it, and you guys set a bad example for yourselves as a result. And I thought it a little bit funny following that week, personally. Personally, I expected maps to be more along the lines of the maps that my team put out. You know, it's a coincidence, but I said it. My team just made more typical maps than what I expected. Very straightforward art style. You know, not focusing too much on the parts that aren't gameplay, and allowing people to do whatever they want with the gameplay. You know, some guidance, but not too much. So there's still like problems to solve in gameplay. This was probably my favorite map of the league, though, so a little unfair. I would have voted for this if I could. Here's another one from my team. Looks pretty similar. Very straightforward style. In this case, Temp had like hours, plural maybe, to work on maps this week, so it's impressive that he's able to do that kind of stuff in that small amount of time. But this is the kind of art polish that I'm expecting, or was expecting going into the league. What was the other one? I know what levels are called. I can't believe it. No other teams use the theme this way. They put the level in a star. But yeah, very, very straightforward style stuff. With that in mind, though, some levels look great. It's really cool that you're able to do it in a week. I wasn't trying to encourage that kind of stuff. It's cool that you were able to do it. But I really hope you guys understand that you know, I'm not saying you're wasting your time doing that kind of extra polish, but it's not the same environment as normal. You're not we're not asking you to make maps that are normal, like CMR quality kinds of maps. I expected very plain looking stuff. So actually, I don't want more polished maps. Sorry to disappoint you map makers out there, but I want you guys to have harder lives. Okay, so let's imagine a different way of doing it. What if we still give map makers more time? There's the idea that we could give them 2 weeks and then give grinding 1 week. So not a bad idea. You could even alternate these things. So let's say a week was twice as long. It's 2 weeks instead. I'm gonna use the term week very liberally. I'm trying to curb map making quality in a map making competition because it's not specifically a map making competition. So Twinkie, to some extent, I don't view it that way. Like that kind of feedback, the player that's not in the league is valuable from the outside, but when you look at it a certain way, it's just for fun. Like I'm not really going to entertain the idea that it's entirely about map making. When you think about it, there are multiple goals. So I want everybody included. I want more than just map makers valued. The thing was, map makers weren't valued very much. But it's supposed to be a fun, different kind of challenge for map makers. So yeah, it wasn't balanced, sure. I liked that teams approached the league different from each other. Some teams like OK Broomers, they did really well with the map making process. Other teams, like the one that won, they focused almost entirely on the competition aspect. They had the worst maps. And it turns out that didn't really matter because the scoring was the way it was. Honestly, that's fine. We're accepting it for what it is. But yeah, people like to make certain kinds of maps. I didn't want to take that away to an extent, but I didn't want them to be able to make the same kinds of maps as normal. Yeah, I wanted to give them challenges. So let's say you alternate 1 week of each. That's a good way to handle it potentially, but it's very long. It does help that it's very flexible and lenient. So you know, you only have one. You could have 2 weeks to make maps. You could have only 1 week of grinding and then announce the theme for the following week. And it's nice to have that break time for the players too. Really good idea. We ended up tossing that idea out relatively early for the sake of a more chaotic environment. which had its pros and cons. Okay, so let's imagine a different idea where instead of making the weeks longer and still splitting it up, we can still split it up within the week itself. And let's say there are 3 days associated for grinding. There are 2 days on top of that for the map making, and then there are 2 days for break time or just double checking the final drafts, making sure there are no issues. Some of this is in response to like other feedback, but this is another kind of model to handle each week. Having less time to grind means you're gonna have it's more similar to a daily in terms of that kind of thing. Okay, so one other little thing, by the way. Imagine when I describe this, I'm also potentially changing other rules about the format. Also, Miles, feel free to join the call because it's hard for me to read and talk at the same time, and you honestly have opinions on some of this kind of stuff that made more of an impact because you were in the organizer group. Like I was trying to defend the point system earlier, for example. But I'm not really gonna defend the point system that much. I think it was the worst of the league. Like, not the worst thing we could have done, but just like one of the worst aspects. But because of the point system, that same system and doing a 3-2-2 kind of system would not work very well. You would need to address something like limiting maps each week that players actually score on. Very good idea. It's almost a spoiler. What else? It'd be more interesting to see if sniping would be more of a factor. The best players are not going to just run away with a week worth of time. But with only 3 days, it's not as overwhelming. If you only have to play a certain number of maps, it's not as overwhelming. And then the players get extra break time. I'm trying to catch up on stuff in chat. I'm just gonna keep going in order. If you guys want to follow along, I put the link to this in Discord, by the way. This is in the announcements post that I put, this very specific file. So you can skip ahead of me and look at things that I'm going to address. And you can add stuff onto that. In addition, you can still fill out the forms. I do want people to fill out this. If you can fill it out right now, that'd be great. I'll go over the stuff at the end. I do also have that file. I just gotta format it a little bit better, but it's ugly enough as is. Fill out this. This one's also in the Discord. Fill out the community idea one. If you guys think that ranking 8 maps is too challenging or anything, here's a suggestion. Let's say you group them together in little tiers. Honestly, ranking 8 is very, very complex. But just group them together like, alright, these were my first 3 favorite. That's just not in the same group as these ones, and then this one's, but actually in Bloom is the worst. You know, something like that. And then from there you're like, okay, well, I preferred this one to this one to this one, and so on. Yeah, just as an example. But then you're like, oh, well, Veek, the Dandelion was definitely better than that. And, you know, that's a good way to handle this. Just group them together and then sort. But yeah, definitely fill out this one, at least. This one I pinned in, I put in the announcements for normal Dust Force. What ideas do you want to see happen for events? What kind of stuff do you want to see on this channel? And then what other ideas might you have? If you want to get involved, let me know. Advertisement over. Alright, imagine a world where I make it even harder on map makers. Less time map making. Even lower of an expectation of quality. It further emphasizes that you're just supposed to focus on gameplay, arguably. Some people aren't gonna like it, the less amount of quality that they can put in. I think it would still be a very important kind of thing to consider. It's hard for me to just see responses like I need more time to make maps, and also not think that, like, what if they didn't have more time to make maps? They're not supposed to. Because, like, the point of the league wasn't to give time to make maps. We're talking about a limited amount of time. People will get better at making maps with teams. It's just an idea. Break time. At one time during the league, we were thinking about a mid-season break. I didn't finish this thought. We didn't do it. We just decided to go forward. I don't remember how many of us made that decision. But it was a very impromptu kind of thing. It was just like between weeks 2 and 3, I was like, hey, should we just have a break week? And then we just decided against it. And then just finished it out. There are reasons for and against it. It's hard to go back in time and just be like, yeah, it would have been the right move. Alright, so here's another thing that we can limit. It's not just stuff like map making. It's not just time. It's the requirement for players to play. They don't have to play as many maps. So there is the very unimportant mechanic that we included that drops the lowest score on each team for each leaderboard. It was very unimportant because there were so many players. And the more and more players that were added to it, the more apparent the issue became associated with scoring as many players. So if we limit how many maps each person gets credit for, that accomplishes the intent of it to make it more lenient. The amount of stress on every player in that point at that point is a lot lower, thus giving people more time to make maps and actually play the levels that they want to play. You know, if you only had to play 4 out of 12 leaderboards, then, well, it's much different. Yeah, there are different ways to think about it. The purpose of the original goals of the league were that we wanted to make it challenging for map making, and we didn't want it to be entirely focused on the polish aspect of how maps look and stuff like that. Like, people are going to be grinding these for a week. They're gonna be grinding these maps over and over. So they'll actually, like, people don't really think about making maps that are there to be played over and over, not just like SS'd a few times. Like, you get an okay time on it, good enough. Twinkie, you need to participate in the league to have a better understanding of what actually happened. I'm sorry to say. Like, from the outside, you only understand so much context. Like, no offense, but I'm not responding to some of the things that you're saying. Like, I do value your opinion, but the uploading did not work that way. The re-uploading. I'm gonna talk about the re-uploading later, though. So there are two ways to limit ways that we can play, have each player play everything. No one suggested taking out any percent. I'm just gonna put that out there. It's like an easy kind of thing. Some people don't even test their maps for it. So it is a problem, though, that I don't want to alienate people that like any percent, because why wouldn't we include that in the league? I do want to value different kinds of players that want to do different things. We didn't value certain players as well as we could have. You know, it's hard to value map makers, honestly. Like, you guys are saying we could have valued map makers more. How? Like, how can we justify that depending on the kind of format? I don't know. Like, there are a lot of different ways that we could do it, but I can't take some of those responses without more detail. Like, you just need to work it into the format and have it support everything else. The music is gone. All right. So another really important thing that was made clear was the approach to the league was very, happy-go-lucky. Just hope it works out. Very, like, take everything in a good faith kind of approach. Very lenient. Because I didn't want to overcomplicate the rules, and I really can't enforce them. Like, what am I gonna do? Kick someone out when I want them included? If we wanted something actually serious and competitive, it would have been a different rule set. We tried to value map makers, but there ended up being so many points in the system because of all of the maps and everything counted, all that other stuff. I'm not now saying I want to value map makers. I said from the beginning I wanted to value map makers, but it is very difficult to do that. And I gave them the reward of like, hey, you get to choose the theme every week. That was probably one of the best things of the recap every week, having that kind of discussion. But like, how is the part of the challenge. Like, if I just give points, is that enough? Do the points really even matter? Like, yeah, we love maps and all that stuff. Yeah, and I'm gonna keep saying it. I do not expect the same kind of quality that you are thinking about with regards to maps. So, like, let's look at this again. For example, this map. If you think about this style of map, I don't think of this as like really high quality, like really polished visuals and stuff like that. There's like nothing else going on in the background. It's tested for gameplay. It's like you guys can spend time on your team making it. I do want to value map makers, and I do want to value the time that they put onto maps. But the challenge is how. They're like, because the point system overvalued all of the people that could grind, because we got like double the amount of players as expected. It's hard to see that when like it's hard to see how it's gonna work out. The map making bonus definitely wasn't big enough, and I was able to adjust it on the fly, but no one's saying that kind of stuff. We're not thinking about that kind of stuff in the moment. Yeah, after the fact, it should have been valued more. Okay, sure. Well, okay, should I value a certain kind of map making quality? Okay, well, it's not an easy thing to talk about. Like, there are arguments on every side. Like you're understanding that this is a very complex kind of problem to solve. I want to support many different kinds of players and their interests, but it's very difficult to combine everything together. I don't know the best way to do it. We're gonna do it wrong again next time, don't you worry. If you actually have ideas for this, for ways to solve it, then, you know, work with us. I'd love to work with more people. I did not get much volunteer support for this entire league. I had to commit to something, and, you know, a lot of people liked being able to play in the league, but I was very disappointed with, you know, the result. I'm always very critical with how I run these kinds of community events. But yeah, separating everything is also a pretty good idea when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, you don't combine them at all. That's a good solution to the individual and team problem. So teams could have been more balanced if there were some separation between only being individual based, seemingly, and this tiny little bonus for map making. So I did want people to draft based on however they felt. It would be great if they thought about, like, you know, you can draft people that are good at different things. And these are all great possible ideas for future variations of the league. But if I don't get like really specific results, really specific examples, other than you know, that kind of feedback, I'm not really gonna be able to do much with it. I am gonna have to reread the chat because, you know, it's hard to respond to everything with all the sentences. Reading hard. Let me keep going over some of this stuff though, because it's taken a bit longer than I expected. So yeah, I don't want things overcomplicated, but it left us with some dilemmas. You guys saw a little taste of it in this. So for instance, Should we hide leaderboards? Here are the negatives for each, by the way. So I try to also funnily describe some of the ways to complain about it. You could look at it as like a lose-lose kind of scenario if you want to, but we gotta choose some option. Like it's really easy to come up with example ways to abuse the existing systems. Like, hey, you could vote for your own maps if you're allowed to. Personally, I did happen to like my map more, and I think that's fair. But we ended up not going with the ability to do that, and went for the other option, which was please don't vote for your own maps. And you know, obviously the way to game that system is you don't vote, or you choose to not vote for certain opponents. So yeah, it could be gamed either way. There's nothing I can do about that. It would have to be some different kind of voting process. But I wanted more people involved. I wanted to get the people that actually played the maps involved. That was the intent. There are different ways to handle it, like based on how many people played your maps, like other kinds of stuff like that. Those are all ideas, but we didn't have those ideas beforehand. It's hard to enforce the activity aspect when it's more lenient. Yeah, losing points for not voting, not a bad idea, but it wasn't pushed from the beginning, and I didn't want to change too much in the middle of the league. I will be rereading chat just to make sure I didn't miss anything later. If you guys have very specific examples, definitely let me know. If you guys are interested in volunteering, definitely let me know. Yeah, I have the chat log, don't worry. So if you score on your own team's maps, then you know, arguably it could be abused. If you don't score on them, then you know, your maps could just screw over other players. You're gonna have to pick one side or the other. We ended up choosing that you do score on your own maps because the other teams have a whole week to catch up. You know, we're just hoping everywhere that people just don't abuse stuff, because you know, we have a happy little community here. If sniping could have been an issue, one way to handle that was we could hide replays. Technically possible. There are ways to solve that problem, but it's a little demanding. It's something we haven't done before. If anyone is interested in going ahead to help solve that problem, let me know. I already have plenty of notes on the matter. But you know, in the meantime, I'm not that motivated to make some of those solutions when I don't need to, and if I'm like the only one doing that kind of stuff. Alright, so other things. This is the first time we've done anything like the draft checking before. For CMRs, sure, Skyhawk will ask for the maps in advance, but well, this is a little bit different. This is a limited amount of time. It's a stressful kind of situation. I am trying to put a stressful situation on the map makers, as I've established. I don't want it to be easy. It's too bad it's so few points, but aside from that, it's fun to be challenged, and I hope people embrace the fun aspect of it. and I hope that we can work that in better. So this had some pretty poor communication with the captains about responsibilities here. I wanted more information, but also I don't want to appear conflicted because of being in the league myself. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that, like whether organizers should be in the league or not, or whether there should be people on the outside running things. I'll go into some of that other stuff later, but ultimately it just comes down to, like, it's the first time that we were doing it, and we weren't sure how far we could go. Me especially. I personally tried to mitigate how much I actually would play a map. So I showed this on stream 1 week. Maybetta sent All-Star. I was like, yeah, I guess I could look at that on stream, and I'll show you how this works out. I think there was only one thing that I ended up saying that was more serious, which was there was a funny Jorf right here, something like this. I'm planning to talk about Jorfs also later. Nice spikes. But I think there was something like this for spikes. And I was just like, yeah, there's the possibility people could boost off this. Like, they can boost off that way. You know, there's some way to be able to do that. And I showed it on stream at the time. So I was describing using a map that was pretty much of this, with that one spike. How I look at maps. So first impression, let me think about what I was doing at the moment. Okay, so I'm trying to not get much of an advantage, and I'm deliberately trying to not test as much because I just want to see what happens to an extent. But I'm going to look for things that make the level potentially annoying to grind. Like, we're talking about people are gonna play this for a week. They want to be able to enjoy it for a week too. Shouldn't that be reasonable to an extent? So it's honestly very hard for me to do some of the strat guessing just without playing it for a lengthy amount of time. Personally, I don't think that's one of my strong suits, coming up with initial routes. Like, I have to test so many things. My personal strengths as a player, they lie in the finding very little optimizations, kind of like the task perspective, and adapting them in a more viable manner. So I'm looking for very little strats, little optimizations. That's the kind of way that I improve a lot of my PVs on other levels. So it's hard for me to do the first playthroughs and have a good understanding of everything. It would be great if I could see videos of the players, the map makers, trying it out themselves and showing what they expect the route to be like. You know, I feel like that's kind of important. they need to have a good understanding of how their map's going to play, after all. And if I see something like that, you know, the equivalent of a replay, then I can better look for examples of like, oh hey, what if you went this way instead? It just makes more sense to work at it from that kind of perspective. Something that's not something I enforced, obviously. I'm mostly checking for things like, okay, well, you have all of these potential jorfs, like just looking at this in a vacuum and saying like, hey, these are all of the places where you could jorf. That kind of way of approaching it, it's difficult. Not everybody listened to it as well. There were some suggestions that I wanted to make the maps better to play. Like, hey, what if you removed dust in this one spot? That way it's easier for people to hit it. Personally, I really liked the first week's theme for not making it challenging to anybody involved. Except that some maps require certain boosts that could be spaced awkwardly. You know, there are a lot of things that could happen either way, and I just need some amount of testing. So over time, I got at least JBC involved in the draft checking. Yeah, I really liked the first week's theme because it didn't have Jorfs. But I'll talk about some Jorf stuff later because that's juicy. What's another good example map? We could go into the re-uploads.
Can you look over one of my team's maps a fair bit?
Yeah, which one?
I don't remember. I just remember there was at least one. Maybe not Attacky too?
There was that original version of Tinted that you sent that
Oh yeah,
was
that
way
one too.
different. Which I do hope you upload, by the way. I don't think you did.
I literally just uploaded it like 30 minutes ago.
Wow, okay. Well, if you guys are interested in Dark Tinted, there's a new map out there. So, oh no. Red and red.
Yes, went with a slightly different decoration given that it wasn't in the league.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fine. The, okay, so this particular map, I ended up giving some different kind of feedback in a non draft kind of manner, because like I was talking with Avenged earlier about like reasons why I don't like levels like Attacky. You know, personally, I do not like to play them. This was one of this map happened to be one of the like, I don't know how much he changed it, but I received a map very similar to this that, you know, there are just a lot more spikes in the level. There's a lot more dust everywhere. There are a lot more things you had to do. So you gotta attack everywhere, pretty much, and it limits how much you're able to do some of that kind of stuff. And it's more of a philosophy kind of thing when it comes to addressing those aspects, and not what I was doing when I was looking at maps for drafts. So this is a different kind of scenario, by the way. Like, I'm trying to make it clear to everybody that the things that I don't like about this map, the things that I don't like about Attacky, I would not recommend people actually change them. because I was trying to stay away from the creative aspect from drafts, because I was trying to take myself too much out of that process, and just let people make what kind of maps they want to make, to some extent, like what they're able to make rather, in that time frame. It's challenging. Like I wanted people to see the responses to their maps. Yeah, it's hard to describe that kind of thing. But Tinted has a good example. There were a few places in this level originally that were a little different. For instance, there used to be this here, and it may not like affect much, but there's like, I'm gonna let teams know that it is possible to jump through these kinds of formations. And some teams responded to that differently than other teams. I wanted it to be clear that the best way to handle it is to just design around it. Like, you don't have to include this kind of geometry. So I'm glad that in this case Tinted took it out. You know, there are no obviously abusable dwarfs in this map, I think. Like, you could argue that in TAS maybe there's something, but it did a much better job. What's another one? But yeah, it's hard to look at maps with that kind of perspective in mind, I guess. So it was really awkward. There's no way to do it. So we didn't really know what we were getting into. And it's hard to enforce people to actually have maps in time when most of that, like, I don't really want to punish people. That would feel weird in that kind of setting. So, you know, we tried it the way we tried it. So let's talk about the levels that were actually re-uploaded for fun. Okay, week 1, we had one every week. It was great. A good pattern to set. We had grayscale growths. There is a script that the level used that caused lag for some people. I think it had to do with this. I don't exactly know how it worked, but this was the easiest one to understand, probably, because, you know, you just, it lagged, and then, like, this is not the version with the lag, but there was a script that caused it for some people. We didn't realize this until the next day, roughly, I think. So it took a while for us to decide that we actually wanted it re-uploaded. This is the first time that, you know, there's been the ability to do something like that. So a little background on this, I guess. A little more context. You know, there's no precedent for most of the stuff that we did. So it's hard to set that and then know you're committing to the right kind of thing. I'm personally very happy that we decided to re-upload things, because we're able to do things with the leaderboard. We're able to merge old leaderboard and new leaderboard seamlessly. I mean, there are seams, but it worked out. I don't think this one was really controversial. It was just the first time we did it. The next one was the only one that had some kind of drama associated with it because I was uninformed about some things, and I rudely approached the team about it. It was a very knee-jerk kind of reaction that I've apologized for already. I apologize again. It was a little bit rude in how I wanted to forcefully handle this kind of thing. But the idea was the camera didn't connect here. I don't know how this even works. How this camera works. I guess you just re-enter the circle and then you're back in. Nice. Anyway, the 80%, you weren't able to see any of this stuff. There were two things that made this an issue. One, Camel just said in chat, this was not in the draft at all. There was a different 80% that was basically tiles, like, not fleshed out, but you jumped through this little area first. There was some little level to go through. Bad representation on screen, but it is what it is. There was a different 80% route, and I thought, yeah, sure, that's fine. Like, you guys will flesh it out. But then the final version of the map was notably different than the draft. And I only learned about this 7 hours after it was released. Some people were complaining about it. Some people were starting to accept it. When I saw it, I thought, because I couldn't see what was going on, that, this is kind of ridiculous. Like, there's no reason why people would want to play this. But part of the problem is I don't think people should be so accepting of it. Like, think of it like stages of grief. Oh no, there's a problem with our map. Oh no, there's a problem with my map. And we go through the stages. People were already at the acceptance that, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Like, people can deal with this. Like, we can't, there's no reason to change it. People can accept it. I think that is not the stage of grief that we need to be at. We can fix it. We can solve the problem. Funny little comparison. Yeah, I did not give you the option to re-upload, and I would not give the option to re-upload again in that kind of scenario. So following that week, we did end up checking final drafts more, but it wasn't enough. I do expect to have some amount of final say, and I was able to do it. I'm very happy that people would not dismiss that map because of the camera. I don't want people to see the map and be like, oh, I have to play this, or like I have to do this, something like that, in order to play the map. But yeah, there's no real precedent set and I'm trying to establish that it's okay to re-upload to fix gameplay kind of issues like that. During the same week, well, let's continue with normal uploads. What was the other one? What one was next? Garden Extreme was third? Yeah. Alright. So this one had a little this one had a very different kind of issue. So in this case, the map draft that we received and the near final version, totally different maps. And I don't have so for the sake of being fair about this kind of stuff, I'm gonna show the original version that I got for this. Task Force. Blech. Okay, so here's an initial version of the map. So I had JVC and I played this more. You can tell some very different geometry if you remember what the original looks like. This kind of geometry it's not designed around dwarfs at all. So I see this and I'm like, hey, you know there are dwarfs like everywhere in the map, right? There's no way they're not optimal, especially in this case. Especially for any percent. Like, why even bother wall jumping? So I say, hey, by the way, this has a ton of dwarfs. Can we please address this? I don't want people to have these kinds of options because I don't want there to be that kind of gameplay that's I don't want that kind of gameplay to be an option. You know, good or not, I don't want that kind of gameplay to be an option. I'll go over some more of that later. But assuming I want dwarfs removed, whether they're good or not, we went through 5+ versions back and forth with the map, and every time it only takes out like it only fixes like these dwarfs. Like, okay, this section handled. Okay, well the next version we fixed this section. The next time we fix these dwarfs over here. But it's time after time, like, and then like for the final upload, I don't receive an absolute final version of the map, unfortunately, and the final suggestions to continue removing dwarfs weren't met, and we were left with still dwarfs in the section that, you know, whether they're faster or not, that's undesirable. And I've been trying to be clear with all teams that just don't have them in your map. I'm trying to be the same about it with every team. Please try to not have them. And if they're in the way of gameplay, just make more of an effort to do it. So I had to call it out on stream. You know, it felt really awkward. Sorry if I put any people on the spot, made them feel uncomfortable. But in this scenario, I was not going to accept the map as it was. So unfortunately, I didn't receive the absolute final version. Some of the final advice was not made use of. And under some circumstances that can be okay, but when, you know, it still gives this kind of inconsistency with the rest of the league. I don't want it to be like that. So I did have to address it on the spot, because that was honestly really disappointing to reveal live. Okay, shooting stars. That was a very simple kind of problem. There's the game. Shoot. So in this case, the original camera, in the draft version, the camera did not follow you upward here. So assuming you went from here to here to here, the camera didn't follow you at all for the remainder of the level. It was a little disappointing, because like the next place you can land is right here. So having to do any amount of movement after this blind was undesirable. That got fixed. That's great, but it didn't get fixed enough, because it was later discovered that if you approach it from farther left, it still wasn't good enough. Fortunately, that was realized quickly and addressed quickly, and I'm really happy that that team cooperated the way that they did. Definitely shoutouts to Cork for helping work through that with C. That one was handled much better. Let's talk about maps that weren't re-uploaded. So, there was an inconsistency, admittedly, with some levels that weren't re-uploaded. So on the same week as, whatever week this was. Okay, so Antenna had 2 issues with it that were kind of minor, but the organizer team ended up vetoing this. So, step 1, there's an amount of off-camera movement, like just the amount of time to move from here to here. Deemed not significant enough to matter. I do not like this. If I knew about this camera stuff, if we could have tested this camera stuff in advance, you're gonna fix it. Like, there's no reason to not fix this kind of stuff. If you know about it, it's gonna be the case. Like, yeah, why wouldn't you make it more playable? Like, obviously, I'm not trying to throw shade on the map makers for not noticing this kind of stuff. It's totally understandable and it happens. But like, in this kind of week-long competition environment, I want to make it as easy as possible for the players too. I don't want them to actually not like playing the maps for a whole week. Yeah, I definitely don't understand cameras. On top of that, there are 2 dwarfs coming up. In the original draft, there was not a problem here, because there was not as much geometry in this section. So, in the original version of the draft, even though it was possible to dwarf here and here, it didn't matter, because you couldn't actually skip to the next area because of it. The dwarf itself is actually really awkward. The one that matters more. So, if you look really closely, spikes. So, right here, there's actually an illegal tile. So you can't actually like stand on it in the same way. And there's one of these later in the level too. So that makes the dwarf really awkward to go for, unfortunately. But it's still, you know, like kind of valuable. This one, Same kind of idea. It's valuable, but not exactly the kind of level that benefits from it as much, I guess. But again, in the draft, you were unable to jump through this section at all. So that kind of difference made it awkward to address, and we decided to not bother re-uploading, asking for it to be re-uploaded, because these were more minor, and it's honestly really awkward to draw that line. I find, I mean, after this week, we ended up checking the final drafts more because there were both, there was this and Subterranean on the same week that had two problems that were not in the drafts. So there was no way I could have found them. So yeah, I don't like the distinction that was made personally. It's hard to draw a line, especially when you don't have the final draft. Same week, we had Upright Tree. Now this one had a very clear any percent that was made known much after the fact. Let me show it off for you guys. Yeah, week 2 was pretty special. Alright, consider yourself slightly confused for a little bit here. Why hit the porcupine? Why hit the quills? Well, they're gonna hit the enemies. Now, this has multiple issues. One, the route itself was hidden, so although the intention of Camel was not to actually capitalize off it, but just an experiment, see if anyone finds out the route, because it was so hidden, it had too much potential to be unfair, like as a possible snipe. So in the recap that week, we got plenty of Camel scolding in. Feel free to continue that in trash talk if you really want to, but we've already addressed this publicly. This kind of intended hiding strats, controversial. We don't want teams to benefit too much from this kind of thing. So when we figured out exactly what was going on, why it wasn't that bad, end quotes, I told Camel, dude, just grind your map, show the route. Like, we want people to fairly be able to compete on this. Like, it's known. Get all of the strats out there so that the potential backlash from it is mitigated now instead of worse later. And I think we handled that situation well. We didn't re-upload. Could have, I guess. Didn't think about it. It's definitely more Camel's fault for allowing it because he very clearly intended it. Like, he very clearly made sense, or made it possible. But yeah, Cow did figure it out. Yeah, I don't have any FFZ emotes, unfortunately, here. But what's interesting is it's not an auto scroller because the quills can unload, like right here. So maybe a task would be fast enough to keep them loaded the whole time, but no, it didn't go fast enough. It was still frozen there. But the auto scroller issue, definitely an issue that I made clear to some teams. What's another one? Other controversial maps. Springboks Stronghold Jorf. This was the only Jorf that was kept. This one was a result of bad communication. I don't remember which team made this map, but they tried to get in as many Jorfs as they could. I'm pretty sure it was Team 8, right? Because they just kept trying to make dumb Jorf jokes with all their checkpoints and stuff like that. And I sent an image of, hey, you know there's a Jorf here, right? But it never got removed. I wasn't sure at the time how much it could save for any percent, but it became very evident that it saved 0.1 to 0.2 depending on character stuff. I do not like having this. Is it re-uploadable? You didn't receive a screenshot? I'm really sorry. Just to now know that finally. Yeah, I thought Skyhawk was passing along some of that info. But yeah, there was just too much miscommunication between us and the map makers. Like Skyhawk would send me something. I didn't always make it clear when I also received it. It just was really awkward to handle. I kind of wanted it to be in the captain's chat, but I didn't know how much I wanted to give the maps to other captains. I should just trust them, honestly. So but the idea with, yeah, there's no reason to allow them. This kind of Jorf is also not very difficult to grind for, because all you have to do is just climb over, dash, and then down dash jump. Yeah, very easy, as I just showed. Very easy. But yeah, I wish that got removed. I told many teams similar advice. If there's somewhere that if you removed spikes, it would change the map itself, consider removing spikes. See how it works. So that was the only dwarf that got any action. The final one that I had big problems with. Star. Alright. Okay, so I actually had really big problems with this, unfortunately. The night before everything was due, I was having lag issues on this map because there's so many props in the background, and I still have lag issues to an extent. It ends up getting a little choppy sometimes. Not all the time, fortunately. This is actually running way better than it ever has. Cool, so now that I'm streaming it, it's doing a little bit better. Very cool. Either way, I do not like that there were so many things, and I had to disable mid-ground in order to play it. I don't want to force that on players. They may not know to do that. They might not read the map notes. Just handle it differently than stacking on all the props. On top of that, JVC and I went back and forth because he didn't have any lag at all. So JVC didn't have any lag at all. when he made this. When I got the version, I was getting 40 FPS. And he sent me version after version, and you know, it went up in FPS like 1 or 2 every time. And he was struggling to handle it, unfortunately. He wasn't able to test. I was getting kind of frustrated with it. But there was like, because we were focusing so much on lag, I wasn't able to complain as much as I wanted to about how dumb it was that you couldn't see your character at multiple points in the map, like the beginning and the end. Like, I do not like this at all. There's no reason to make your character invisible. I'm glad that basically no one liked this map on the voting. So, you know, sure, you could say it's supposed to be this kind of map, but don't make it annoying for people to play. So yeah, if I were given more ability to control some of this kind of stuff. Hey, this is actually an incredibly high effort map when you think about how it handled props. Right? I told him to remove props, and he just kept layering them on and on. Like, okay, I'll remove like one here, and then he just put a bunch more on. Like, that's not the way to solve the problem. But yeah, fun jokes aside, I do not think this is acceptable, and I regret allowing it. But that said, I hope people played it with background, with the mid-ground disabled. Alright, so those are all the questionable maps. Well, maybe not all of them, but this is a long little postmortem. So yeah, there was a lot going on. We made it and we finished. This is not the end of the postmortem. I still have actual feedback to respond to. I already addressed a lot of it. Make it more lenient for people. Need more consistency in mechanics. I want to encourage more team stuff. I want to value the map maker somehow. How? I don't know. More understandable point system. There are too many points. I can test stuff now that data exists. I wasn't able to do some of that kind of stuff beforehand. It's unclear. We can try out different stuff now. We're going to try out different stuff later. And I want to finish this thought. Continue to let people complain so they feel like they make an impact. There we go. That's you guys. Alright. I'm going to address feedback now. But first, let's look at the best map poll. I hope all of you guys voted for best map. Let's see if I got any more results. Nobody else submitted this form during the stream. Okay. Here's some results. Let's not zoom in for a moment there. I got 20 responses from this poll. Zoom in, please. People like no dying. Very cool. Not as much love for the other themes, but that's just because no dying is the best theme and there's no way around it. Don't worry, I'm not showing feedback on these results. Hold on a moment.
Waka's best theme, fight me.
Hold on, what'd you say?
I said Clocka's best theme, fight me.
Fight this man. Okay, in the information, I'm gonna put map poll results. Okay, so in the information, I have posted a new form. You guys can now view this one. Alright, so here we have some averages of, you know, like less than a third of the players who participated, voted. Some interesting results. In Bloom with barely better average than both Dandelion and Subterranean Vein. Very close between those three, with Corridor pretty close behind. And then very close for these three for last of, you know, top 8, but also Starstruck. Perhaps because it's no longer just best based on gameplay. You know, definitely better art than Vebula. Better other aspects. So that was the only funny one that had a different result, even though this one's really close. But yeah, in Bloom, best map proven here. So I used a rank choice voting algorithm that is incredibly annoying to show off. So I'm not going to really go into too much detail in describing the process on the spreadsheet, because it's really easy to just color and label it. So all you have to do is understand that things are colored based on significant votes. So for instance, some of these votes matter and some of them don't. Imagine you're picking for the best overall. What you do is you see which one has the least amount of votes first. So in this case, you're like, oh no, Grayscale Growth's worst map this week. Unfortunate that you know, during the first week it was such an even kind of split. Like this one was the most even across the board, very close between best and worst. But Grayscale Growths is the first to eliminate. After you eliminate Grayscale Growths, you're like, okay, well, now Grayscale Growths vote counts for Dandelion, or in Bloom. And you eliminate them in turn. So the next two to eliminate ended up being City Lights and Machismo. I'm not just looking at first, obviously. That's why I expanded it to top 3 later weeks. When you only count of these 3, which has the most votes, Tuprom has fewer votes than the other 2, very close again, but then you have only 2 remaining, and then In Bloom ekes it out over Dandelion. If you only count In Bloom where Dandelion votes, which one is ranked higher. And then for second, Dandelion ekes it out over Tuprom. The same kind of format works every other week. Corridor is the only map that actually had a majority of anything. It got 20 out of 39 votes for best. So it could just skip ahead to actually winning that week. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, the weeks were pretty close. But yeah, week 1 definitely the closest by far. Really interesting to see. Definitely made me want to have, you know, include more of the ranks that mattered for rank choice. If you guys have questions on that, I can explain a little more. But I'm not going to go through the hassle of outlining every step of it because, well, it's not very motivating to me. I'll just put it that way. You know, I could do more of that stuff now, but you know, were my other volunteers too. But I didn't release it during the moment because it's just so dumb to look at, and I had no way to solve making it look better. So I ended up just coloring the votes that matter, but not really labeling better than that. So sorry for not making it public. I don't hugely regret that though, because I don't have many volunteers, it turns out. So it was expected that people were gonna drop out along the way. We were, you know, pretty aggressive with the recruiting. JVC messaged a bunch of people. He did the cold DMs. That was pretty funny how it worked out. A lot of people joined. We got like double the amount of people I expected. I thought we were only gonna have the more devoted players in the community, and more people would just kind of look on from the outside. But then more and more people just joined, and from there, even though it exacerbated the point systems issues, it was cool to have everybody involved. So I think we did really well for, you know, first time. It worked out. I can take out this note to myself. But the problem with that was, like, if one team is less active than other people, I can't punish the other teams. I can't make them move their players away from their teams, because, like, I don't want to break up the homies. It's just an awkward situation to be in. It was gonna be unbalanced from the start. We accepted it. Like, the only way to handle something like that would be to make sure that everybody is willing to already commit at a certain level, and they know what they're getting into from the beginning. You know, just approaching it in a different way. Yeah, no one wants to break up. Multiple times there was a final week idea, but it was never fleshed out, and I didn't like that there were no good ideas associated with it. Everybody was kind of exhausted after 4 weeks and a practice week too, so no reason to have another week that would unlikely change an outcome. There are multiple ways that we could have handled it. For example, the top 4 teams would qualify, and then the maps would still have to come from somewhere. Either the other 4 teams make them, only those 4 teams make them. Maybe they have a week off beforehand. That was part of the plan, or that was part of a plan. That way, you know, you could actually choose who made the maps. There could be designated map makers that were not part of the league. That was part of a plan. That would have been, you know, more appropriate for a final week. But yeah, having the league itself as a qualifier was part of the original intent. But, you know, 4 weeks and a practice week was plenty. So we ended up not going with it. The recap streams, I thought, did not go well in general, aside from I really liked the theme choosing process, getting people included on that. Ultimately, it ended up shining when people got involved. It was really awkward for me to show things that were cool that happened, because I don't know everything that was cool that happened. So I needed more help. I'm not the kind of person that can like gush over all of the wonderful fun things out there in the world. I'm not as much of a memer as other people are. I enjoy that kind of stuff though, and I'm totally fine with being like the person on the side that just like feeds little bits of info here and there. You know, the less stressful color commentary kind of role. Maybe I had some cool streams. checking them out after, like the meme rewards, the meme awards or whatever that was. That was pretty cool to see. I need someone with that kind of energy. Cause I want to appreciate everybody more. Like I don't want to just be negative or plain or that kind of stuff. Cause I'm a pretty negative kind of critical kind of person, as you can tell. I take very little pride in this kind of stuff. When it comes to like, you know, making community events, that kind of stuff. I'm so critical of myself. I'm so critical of my gameplay. That's just the kind of person I am. It makes me try harder, and I do like that about myself. And, you know, it works out for me. But I need a little help, you know. Otherwise, you're gonna get very dry postmortems that, honestly, I could go on for a really long time. I do like talking about this kind of stuff. But, you know, this is what you're gonna get when you don't have other people chime in. Since I already did the little summary, this is where more of you guys can feel free to butt in, by the way, in the Discord call. Especially with some of these topics that I can't explain as thoroughly, and I'm not trying to. But let's talk about Jorfs. It's a lose-lose scenario in my opinion. This is not an easy topic to discuss. This is the first time that we've tried anything like this regarding maps and the league and draft checking and that kind of stuff, and actively actually asking people to remove Jorfs and re-upload because of the gameplay. So I think it's very incredibly doable to avoid that kind of gameplay. So when you say Jorfs are going to happen, I think you are 100% wrong. They do not have to happen. An entire week was devoted to no dying, and then all of a sudden people are like, hey, let's die again. You know, people just love customs that are so difficult. Like, I think customs are way too hard. You guys have been playing this game for years. I don't want to die again. I just want to play the game. Levels like In Bloom or Dandelion that don't punish you for messing up booths. Like, sure, they have some awkward geometry here and there that, you know, makes it fun for people to try to figure out what's fast. You know, more like a stock level kind of appeal. You know, when you look at something like Courtyard, it doesn't just kill you. Firefly doesn't kill you. And people can have fun in that kind of environment. I don't see why people are so fascinated with just killing each other in game, obviously. Like, why do you need spikes there? I think you guys are making levels way too hard. You can make them as hard, gameplay-wise, without killing each other. And they can still be just as fun. Sure, there are going to be more people that beat certain maps. And I do 100% agree with the idea that some maps can be ridiculously hard. I definitely understand that kind of appreciation. It's really, really satisfying to SS those kinds of maps. And honestly, one of the ideas for the league was that we were going to have harder maps as time went on. And, like, the thing is, though, you can do that without doing Jorfs. Like, you saw how much Garden Extreme changed? All that it took is changing some geometry here and there, and it made the level so much more playable. It, like, the level was honestly it had so many more options because it took out dwarfs. It instead of embracing just removing spikes everywhere, like you can keep some of what's important to kill people where you want, like that's fine, but you can still give them options with all of that kind of stuff. Giving people the ability to ledge cancel is so nice because they could have dwarfed and ledge canceled and made it really dumb. So like imagine every single spikes on top of one of those kinds of platforms is removed on certain kinds of maps. Does it affect gameplay at all? The best example is a level like Kilo or Hideout. So, for instance, the level that I was grinding before the league is Hideout 80%, and there are 2 dwarfs in that route that I'm intending to do. So, it's rough. It's very annoying because if you don't get them, you're not gonna get a good run. It's ridiculous. Why not just remove those dwarfs and actually have fun playing the level? Because the dwarfs don't need to be there. So here we are. Imagine Hideout had the consistency of, hey, you know what? Bricks don't need spikes. Bam. Oh my god, now you can beat it as Kid. Oh my god. You know, kind of an exaggerated situation, but good thematic excuse. Like, bricks don't need to have spikes. Like, the people that are hiding out in this cave that settled in there, they put their bricks down. They didn't then put spikes on top of the bricks. They put spikes on top of the cave wall to make it, you know, really difficult for people to go in there, I guess. I don't know. You know, Dust Force lore. But if you take out those spikes, way more fun of a level. And the leaderboards are going to reflect that. So it's not like a oh my god, if there were no spikes, I would have world record. Because if there were no spikes on those kinds of things, then the leaderboards would just be so much nicer. Same with Kilo, very good example. Hideout is a much better example because it does not need spikes on those situations. Like there's no reason to gatekeep that kind of movement. For the casual player, they'll enjoy being able to keep it safe. It would obviously make it a much less difficult kind of gold level. But yeah, ledge cancels are a big deal too. I would give warnings for certain things in the league, like, hey, just so you know, this is really short, and there are gonna be some ledge cancels that could be problematic if you have too many ledge cancels and like it's only 7 seconds long or something. So like it's worth giving that kind of warning in case people didn't actually want that kind of gameplay. So I'm asking people to, you know, consider that kind of stuff when they're making maps and presenting the drafts, because people are gonna play them for a week. So that's the kind of thing I want people to be thinking about when they're making maps in this setting. I don't really care as much about it looking 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. Yeah, it does change Hideout. But what's to say that you can't make it harder in different ways? And there's always going to be some point where you're like, okay, well, what's really the threshold of what's too hard? Like, let's just say there happens to be dust you need to get on this wall. Okay, well, you're always going to try to optimize it, hit it from as far away as possible. Like, oh my god, this is the worst part of the level. You have to hit this very specific dust, like Dusk Run SS. SS has a lot of those kinds of things in the normal game. That kind of stuff, you know, you can test for it, but it's a lot harder to figure out. But yeah, right here. So it's possible to hit all this with one heavy, and this is pretty annoying to play the IL for. So when anyone uses the argument, you know, just let it happen, this is a better kind of example for when you can just kind of let it happen. Sure, you didn't intend for some of this stuff to be possible. It's hard to test it all. That's fine. But when it's so obvious, like when it's obvious to the point of you know, like if Dusk Run happened to have something like this, and it forces you to jump, and it doesn't have dust there, it just has spikes. You know, when it's something as potentially obvious as this, you can fix the level. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, there's no reason to make geometry like this in this setting of the league. All I'm doing is asking people to be considerate of that when making league maps. So it's new. It's a different way to think about it. And we missed some. We're not perfect. So here's some other kind of feedback that we got here and there. Well, also another thing about the recap streams, I wanted people to, you know, show off their maps. I didn't. So something that was really cool, for instance, about Starstruck Coast, I wasn't able to show off because they didn't tell me about it. I want people to, you know, take some amount of pride in their maps. They have different fog triggers for the time of day. Really cool. If they wanted it kept secret, you know, it's a different story, I guess. But I want people to take pride in that kind of stuff. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff I can't easily always know about. Another example was, another draft example was Top Rome. Because I wasn't thoroughly testing maps, I didn't realize there was a script at all. So I thought the any percent was just gonna be you just hit everything. There's no super. You know, I was mistaken. There's actually a script in there. You know, I want map makers to be a little bit more open about that kind of stuff. I want them to, you know, take pride in it, I guess. All the more reason to be more clear about the intended strats too, because having super changes the map a lot in a pretty positive way. In this case, because a lot of this dust is very awkward to hit, and I was honestly pretty concerned, like at a glance, like, yeah, this is gonna be fine to play, but it looks like it's gonna be awkward to attack all the dust. It's probably not gonna be a big problem for the league or anything, but you know, it's gonna be a difficult level. And then it just turns out that it's not at all gonna play like that after I eventually learned that there's a script in there. So I wish map makers would be more forthcoming about some of that information. And I also wish they could take more pride in it. So what I was saying about Starstruck was, I wish you guys could just, you know, I wish all teams had the ability to go on stream when I presented the maps, and they could just tell us how cool their map is. I wish I did that, and I forgot to do it each time. Because you know it's really awkward for me to run those kinds of streams. It's hard for me to appreciate the maps that I don't really know that well in the moment. So I just kind of revealed them, and then I'm like, I don't know what to do. That's how it felt. But if I had the map makers in there for each reveal, it'd be pretty fun. I wanted to do that for the last week, but I just forgot. So I definitely want to improve the recap streams along those lines. So let's talk about some other feedback that we got. Definitely feel free to pop in to voice if you want to argue any of these. Or just keep typing in chat angrily. So what if map makers were separate from players? It depends on the format. Okay, well, if I want to group them all together and I want to value them all together, then they're going to be together and they're going to share some responsibilities. I wanted to allow everybody the ability to contribute, so in this case they were grouped together. That's why we approached it this particular way for this time. If map makers were separate from players, it would be one way of addressing that maps could become more polished and that kind of stuff, but that went against the idea of you know, actually challenging the map makers and making them work together with other people that weren't necessarily map makers. Like, I didn't want designated map makers for this league because of that ability. I might still have the background disabled. I don't think so. No. So again, it depends on the format. If we go with a very competitive kind of format, for like one of the things that was suggested, you know, a very competitive, like invitational style, only the top players fit in the top tier. Okay, well let's just make the people that aren't in the top tier make maps for them, and we'll make like some top tier players make maps for the bottom players, something like that. Or we could just have separate map makers, separate map making competition kind of stuff. I do like the idea of different kinds of map making competitions. Like definitely, I think it's a cool opportunity. Like we could have a similar kind of league that is actually map making related, and every week people just vote on different maps or something, or we have judges every week. But hey, hold on, what if we just did a map making competition instead? That was, you know, basically last year's map making competition again, and that was one of the options for the community poll. When's Dwarf League? I don't know. Good question. Depends on the format. Is there gonna be a league for people that are willing to do dwarfs? Are we gonna have DLC 1.5 dwarf edition? Are we gonna have meme DLC? Every now and then, I think it could be cool, but I'd rather, you know, really limit some of that kind of stuff. I'd rather do an exhibition instead of a league. Think of it that way. Like, you're not gonna have Dwarf League, you're gonna have like, here are a bunch of Dwarf, imagine, okay. So, imagine this idea, the tentatively named Hour Blind Grind, where maps are released together and then people only have an hour to play them. Oh my god, imagine you only have a day or like 5 hours to play all these maps, and they're super duper hard. Who's gonna get the most SSs? Cool idea. That's a cool exhibition. That'd be cool to see on this channel, potentially. Like, hey, we got a 4-hour time limit. These 4 Jorf pros are gonna go at it and Jorf all these levels that were just released. Maybe they're like, I don't know, 8 of them. Whoever SS's all of them first wins, or whoever SS's the most of them. Cool idea. That's a better kind of exhibition, not a league. Better fit. It always depends on the format. What's the intent? Something like that is too meme to really go too hard on for a long amount of time. Should organizers be allowed to play? I'm going to talk about myself personally for a little bit here. So, I did the most on this league. A little obvious. Other people helped, obviously. Thanks very much for that. But I have a background in the Smash community. I ran tournaments for the Melee community primarily, and also Smash 4 PM for years. This was in a relatively small region. We had weeklies. This was for a few years. I was the main host of that. I've hosted more tournaments than I can count at this point. I also was the main person, like I was just the main TO of our region. If any of you guys are familiar with much relating to that kind of stuff, just know that I have that kind of experience with online and offline communities. I've hosted a ton of different kinds of events also. I liked doing different kinds of things. We had, something like a league. I don't remember what we called it at this point, but it was a circuit. That's what it was. We tried multiple circuits, and I tried to have different prizes. I had some sponsors. I've hosted some big tournaments. I've done a little bit of everything. I just, wasn't able to travel much, so I didn't go help out at really big events so much. So I've had different experiences with working with volunteer players, and in addition to being a TO within the local region, I was also a top player. So, I don't want to brag too much about it, but I won money at a lot of my tournaments. Not much, but when you're like the only person doing most of this stuff, and you're like the most active kind of person, but you're also the top seed at like over half of your weeklies, it's kind of awkward, honestly. I'm honestly not in it for the competition. I like doing events. When I came to Dust Force, I tried to step away from doing events, and I just played for fun, and eventually I just got more and more into the grinding, and here I am. But I missed some of that actually fun community stuff, so I tried to do something. When I run events like this, it's challenging to balance whether or not I feel like I should play. Initially, I did not intend to participate in the league, but at a point, it's also annoying because I feel like I devalue the events that I run when I don't participate myself, because it's like you're missing out on some of the most competitive players as well. Like, what's the value for other top players to go to my tournament if they don't even get to compete against some of the top players in my region? So if I don't participate in my own tournaments, I still found it a lot of fun to let's say there are a few top players at my level of play, and there were like only that subset of people ever get in the money. If there's ever an opportunity for me to drop out of the tournament and I don't have to worry about those other players, like they're not gonna show up, I'm doing it every time because I want it to actually be fun for all the other people that aren't just gonna get destroyed by me. So I would like to separate that to an extent if I am going to participate, but I don't want the stress of running the event and also participating because it's awkward to find a balance there sometimes. And I do feel like I do a reasonable job of separating the mindset of a player and also someone arbitrarily enforcing certain things. So that's something that I've had to do for a while, and I tried very hard to do for this particular league. Like,
Yuki's, I can speak to my side as well. My personal opinion, at least in this competition, is given that there's not really, for lack of a better word, any prize for winning other than pride, I don't really see a problem with it. That said, I didn't have as much involvement as some of the other people in looking over maps. But again, from my perspective, there's a very different view between seeing a map and thinking about strats and actually being able to execute them in a timely manner.
yeah.
Like, especially if you're going to be grinding a map for a week, being able to look over those maps beforehand doesn't give you that much of an edge.
Yeah, that is ultimately one of the factors that made me feel more comfortable with participating. I knew beforehand that I wanted to check the drafts to avoid things like dwarfs and things that are annoying to grind. I always knew, or like it was always part of the plan that Skyhawk and I would be the primary people checking maps for that kind of stuff. And I had to include JVC and the others more so, like try to encourage them to help out with it more as the weeks progressed. But it was always in the back of my mind. I don't want to take advantage of this kind of thing. So I would always just like not play the maps for like a day after, or like just, you know, there's a whole week. So at least I didn't have to worry about it as much. But I tried very hard to balance that kind of responsibility. And I disliked that it's so easy. Like it's always so easy to just be like, hey, is this unfair? I'm trying really hard to make it not unfair. Like I don't actually enjoy participating in this kind of stuff under those scenarios, and I wouldn't. For future leagues, I don't always plan to participate. Sometimes I want to do stuff like unranked tournaments. I hosted unranked tournaments twice a year for Smash, where I would just force certain levels of players to not participate. I want to do stuff like that for Dust Force too. It would be great to have some lower level competition, but I don't know how we could do it. It's a little unclear. There are plenty of ideas out there though. You just got to put everything together.
So yeah, as well, Yuki's brings up a good point that if the time limit gets shorter, it's probably going to have some sort of a separation.
Perhaps, yeah. Yeah, when you adjust one thing, you have to think about all of the things that affects. A very important thing that I've been trying to consider in making this work out. You know, you can't just adjust, I need more time to make maps. No, I don't want to make weeks longer. Stuff like that. Like, no, I want to make it harder for map makers because you guys didn't appreciate how hard it already was the way that I expected. You guys started as hard, all right, I'll make it even harder. Angry face. You know, in a fun manner. I want it to be challenging. Alright, so map judging. We could have impartial judges, But in this case, I'm trying to get everybody involved. I'm trying to get even myself involved. Like, it was okay that I decided for everybody to be included. So why not just make it something that everybody that participated in can get to vote on? Not a bad idea. If I want impartial judges, then I need a more serious kind of scenario than something that's just for fun. You know, the point system made it not look as fun, or like more competitive, not just fun kind of thing. But it's hard to enforce some of that. And there are obvious issues when it comes to, if not everybody votes, it's unbalanced. Map voting being private, I had no easy way to show it, and a lack of help regarding it. You know, it's very low on my priority list because it's hard to show off well. And in my opinion, if I can't do something well, I'd rather not show it done crappily, I guess. Like, it's not like not do it at all, but if I can't do it well, I will delay doing it until I'm just embarrassed with it for the rest of my life. Drafting, teams, competition, too uneven. It's hard to do anything about that. Like, that's built into a competition like this. If you're gonna have people choose teams, there's some extent where they're gonna be uneven, and that's unavoidable. And it's more obvious depending on the format. It's hard to handle something like that, but we can try to address it if we want something that's intentionally closer.
Yeah, and there's obviously always the point. Different people went in with different opinions on how they wanted to make their teams.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to force people in this kind of environment to pick solely for the purpose of competition.
Yeah, like, I went in knowing my team probably wouldn't be number one on the scoreboard, best team without question.
Yeah. Some people just want to draft the homies. I wanted to get captains to collaborate more on the drafting, but it was really difficult to get feedback as far as that was concerned from captains. You know, I couldn't get them to jokingly collude at all. I tried to make a lot of jokes. I tried to get in some banter in there, but you know, it was a little too cold. We didn't quite get it moving the way that we wanted. But yeah, I really wanted more of that kind of banter. I wanted people to joke and seriously consider trading people, because you know, I can make it work out. Like, oh, hey, you know what? I actually wanted JVC. How about you get my third round draft pick? You know, fun jokes like that. If you don't pick this guy, I'll give you my draft pick. Whatever. Hey, you let me draft before you this round, I'll draft before you this other round. Like, hey, I really want Cork on my team, says Chippy. And other captains are just like, yeah, sure, that's fine. I'm okay with that kind of stuff. I tried to encourage it. We didn't really get that much of it from the captains, so it could be improved. But it depends on what they're drafting for. In this kind of environment, I wanted the more jovial setting. And as time went on, it got there, but you know, it was a little too late. You could argue also. Themes worked out pretty well in my opinion. I enjoyed giving teams interesting prompts and having them discuss it. That was my favorite part of the recap streams. I also really liked that I made map makers do unique things. There were a lot of people that when they gave feedback, they said that they liked the themes. That's cool. Some people thought they might be like too open-ended or too restrictive, and I'm just like, hold on. I can't do both of those.
Speaking from the perspective of a map maker on this one, I kind of liked that going in, outside of the fact that I was an organizer, I really had no idea what we were going to ask.
I tried to keep them secret to an extent. I really didn't get much feedback, and it was hard to get interesting prompts made, honestly. It was a challenge to come up with prompts. But I really liked that they became interesting topics on stream. That was definitely my favorite part of those streams, having them discuss it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that as well.
It's hard to make the lowest level players matter. Are there any bad players in chat that have ideas? Speak up now. Not trying to call people out, but I don't know. There are ways to address this, but
Speaking as a mid-level player, I
hard to know.
understand the complications.
yeah, like we could separate the tiers of players. We could have different formats. In this case, we combined them all. It didn't work well, in my opinion. I've already addressed that. Watch the VOD. This is gonna be a long one, but we'll have the highlight. You know, people should hopefully understand where I'm coming from at this point. I think we could have done it better. I don't know how we could have done it better entirely. There are ideas out there that, you know, we don't know yet. This kind of goes in line with the two uneven teams. It was very predictable who had more of a chance than others.
Yeah.
Not bad, but could have been more competitive, I guess. Some teams still outperformed teams that were seated above them.
Even still, like, for example, speaking for my team, I feel like Mapler, Miles, Fresh, me, I feel like all of those people have really the ability to get decent scores on maps, but my team just didn't play all that much.
I think there were teams that had a lot of potential that, you know, wasn't fully realized. Every team had a chance, honestly.
Speaking to that,
they could have done
I really
better.
don't feel like it was as predictable as people make it out to be. It just ended up that the teams on top were the ones that you obviously thought were going to do well.
Yeah, there were some teams that were clearly better suited for this, and some that were more active. And that became more apparent over time. But because there were so many maps and so many rounds of gameplay, you know, it's gonna be more evident over time. This was a very long process. There were 48 leaderboards, and there were so many people that counted. There were a ton of points. It could have been half as much and been a little more chaotic. Incentivize best map winners better. How? Alright. Good statement. I've already addressed this. It's not an easy solution to come up with out of nowhere. I really liked that we gave them the ability to choose maps. Is more points? Do points even matter? Did winning even matter? There's my response, by the way. How do I incentivize it when... Does it even matter? We're just doing it for fun. Does fun even matter? Feels bad, man. You know. I do want people to take pride in their maps. I think the intrinsic value is very, very important. Yeah, who won anyway? Dust Force is a really fun game. Customs are great. Except when they're not. Depending on the person. Alright, anyone want to say anything else about this before I move on to things that aren't league related necessarily? I've given opportunities to join the call.
Don't have anything specific. All right. Did we look at feedback from DLC general feedback form?
Yep.
Okay.
A lot of what I was just going through were more consistent concerns. Some of it was addressed above anyway. Some of it, if you don't see your thing addressed, I'm sorry. You can DM me also anytime. Yeah, some of you had funny opinions that I'm not showing publicly on stream because I don't want to embarrass you guys. I don't want to laugh at you in a public setting. I don't want to laugh at your ideas. You people that have different ideas than me are also funny. But yeah, I'm glad it worked out the way it did. Very interesting experience. We got one under the belt. All right, what's the next league gonna be? Drum roll. Not really. We're probably gonna do this 2 or 3 times a year, if I had to guess. It depends what else we as the community decide we want to do. If I had to guess, maybe twice a year. This was very long and time consuming. I do not expect it to be as long future times, depending on the format. I don't expect it to be as intensive next time. We're gonna do things like limit how many maps actually count per player. We're gonna change it up a lot. We're gonna change it up every time, in fact, because I want wildly different formats. I want to do unique things as a community. I do think we'll stray into a few little gimmicks here and there, potentially. Next time, here's what I think we're gonna do. It's the 4-player per team all-star league idea. Every player commits to a certain character. Whether we want them to commit to it for the whole week, for the whole league, per map, not sure yet. I think we'll do it per week. But in that format, imagine we happen to have something like 10 teams of 4. And let's just say that half of them make a map each week. Alright, that's 5 maps each week. Let's make only the SS's count. You only count for your character's SS's on 3 or 4 out of 5 leaderboards. It'll always end up depending on how many people actually signed up. The numbers are gonna, be subject to change, obviously. But you can sign up with your friends. If you don't have a teammate, then we'll help find teammates for you. If you only have like 2 other people in mind, then hey, I'll try to find a lonely player for you. Like, like lonely girl player looking for big strong worth. Imagine the fun that we can have in the Trash Talk channel. Who is gonna be demoted to playing kid? Oh no, I
Player on
signed
the
up
team,
with
obviously.
I signed up with all my friends, but none of us are actually kid players. So each week, one of us is relegated to being the kid player. I think it'll be pretty fun to do different stuff like that. Not sure when we'll do it. There'll be plenty of time. Alright, so what are we gonna do instead? Hey, remember when I said that there's a form? Let's see if anyone filled this out. If you guys haven't filled out this form, please fill it out. The link is in Dustforce Discord announcements. And now it's in chat. Please fill this out if you haven't already. Let's, I guess let's peek at some results. So, believe it or not, I do not plan to use these results for the sole purpose of deciding the next league or anything in particular. It will depend entirely on the people that decide to run it, what they want to do. There's your little asterisk. And let me tell you, right now, I have 32 responses. Although trivia is the lowest voted one, I 100% guarantee that when I do choose to do it for fun, however we choose to do it, like let's say it's on stream and it's chat based, so like I might have a bot in chat that does something, and I'll just happen to also be streaming it for fun. You know, there are gonna be people that enjoy it. It's gonna be a fun community kind of thing. There's no reason to not do it because it has the least amount of votes. You know, looking pretty even. I think this was kind of funny. Some people using this as a the other, they show up differently. Yeah, the hour blind grind. This idea, I don't know. I don't know how we'll change it. It's a very unique format that could vary. Like those exhibitions of dwarfs and stuff, basically talking about that kind of format. You can pretty much count on there being another CMR at some point. I definitely... Okay, so the things that interest me as a potential organizer. I think we've had a lot of CMRs. We've had 61 of them. That's a lot. Let's try some different stuff. That's why we did a league. You know what's similar to a CMR? And also even more intense in terms of, you know, giving map makers stress. It's giving them only 24 hours to make a map. That's right. I want you map makers that are complaining about not having enough time to actually have even less time to work on maps. So, tentatively, I do think that in place of the next CMR, we're going to do this kind of map jam. Or ramen game jam, or whatever you want to call it. You know, we could name it whatever we want. You did something similar with Dough once, cool. I think we should do it again and get more people involved. We could make it 8 hours, we could make it 4 hours, we could make it 24 hours. But I want the bad map makers, the people that have never made maps before, to have a chance to do something. I think it's okay if you sign up in teams. I don't think signups are even necessary. Yeah, I want map makers to complain more in a really fun way. I want them to understand how fun complaining is. Like, oh man, if only I had more time. You know, think about it that way. Like, oh, I was so close to making this map good. And then we as a community can just appreciate how everything comes together. Yeah, exactly. You guys actually don't spend that much time making a map. Guaranteed. guaranteed you could do it in a day if you actually set it aside, or like if you had the day off. Some of you guys are gonna make great maps. Some of you guys are gonna make your first maps ever, maybe. Or like second or third maps ever. And then we can just have some kind of fun way to, you know, judge each other based on like best art, best troll map, sure, best gameplay, best overall. It'll be fun. So if I had to guess, we got GDQ coming up eventually. Like we as a community don't, but I don't want to host something during GDQ personally. So maybe the week after GDQ, we could plan for something like whatever we call this. If any of you guys have a better naming idea, like, you know, CM little r, custom map ramen, not a bad idea. CMJ, custom map jam, the 24MJ, whatever good ideas out there exist. We can come up with something. We could even call it CMR 62 because it's the next CMR, except, you know, this time you don't make them in advance. For this specific map jam, I do plan to come up with a theme in advance. You guys are just gonna have to trust me or someone else that's responsible for coming up with a theme, or multiple of us. Maybe I'll take suggestions. You know, that's always a cool thing in theory. I want to challenge the map makers though. So personally, you know, assuming Skyhawk doesn't just be like, no, I don't want to do anything but CMRs, and then he makes all the map makers do a CMR. Yeah, sure, whatever. It, like, CMRs are reliable, sure. Let's talk about the map competition idea. So, let's say we have a similar team getting together, organizing some of the stuff behind the scenes again. You know, Miles was included in the league. He ran the map competition last time. There are multiple things we could do next time. I think we are planning to do it again. It's just a matter of when exactly we want it to happen. I want to announce it farther in advance. So this isn't an official announcement right now, but it's probably gonna happen. You know, you can count on a map competition. There's no guarantee that there's gonna be any money involved, for what it's worth. You know, it's hard to ask people for money. I think we could crowdfund to an extent. It'd be cool to do some kind of community thing like that for the map competition. Like it's an opportunity, but it's not necessary. If we as a community want to try to do something, like we don't put money into anything really. I don't think there needs to be a prize pool, but if there is one, I want to try to take it a little more seriously. You know, like we can make it a little bit bigger of a deal, get a few more people involved. So if I had to guess, it'll 100% be announced, let's say roughly 2 months in advance at least. 1 month was not enough in my opinion. It was just too like out of the blue. Some people just instantly dismissed it. But with this much warning, like let's say at the end of August, you guys already know there's gonna be a map making competition. So just think about it in the back of your heads. Maybe when we do something next time, we'll have a 100% announcement. But in my opinion, it's gonna happen. And you know, I'll try to make it happen, guys. Whether we do something special or not, I'll try to make it special. And I don't have to worry about participating in that one. Although I can be your arbitrary judge just fine. I can bestow my opinion upon maps, I guess. Again. Last time I was a backup judge. But it was cool having the judges stream their opinions on everything, and we kept it blind from each other too. So I like doing that kind of stuff. So if any of you guys are interested in making any of these things a possibility, let me know. I'll try to, connect the dots. I'll make things happen. The same thing goes for the recurring stream content. I've had a couple people drop names already. I'll get in touch with some people. I really think it would be cool if, a few of you want to get together and do something. I can help work out something. So I actually did not include a couple things on this list that I think are another possibility. So let's talk about bingo and the randomizer and other kinds of race stuff for a moment. I want to do an exhibition featuring some top players. We might do some cool new format. Unclear at the moment. Maybe we'll coincide it with if there happens to be any randomizer further development, like better balancing the gold keys, for example. Very good idea. I want to do that kind of stuff. So let's say we did some kind of little invitational or exhibition event. We can use that to demo everything, and then based on the response from that, then we could consider some kind of, open tournament in the future if people like that. But instead of just saying, let's do a tournament, let's just do a tournament with only certain players in a more controlled environment. Not to discount bad players or anything, but you guys will like it if we put it on at a certain quality. Definitely. We'll have fun with it. So I didn't include stuff like those exhibitions on the list because I'll make one of them work out somehow, eventually. So whether it interests you or not, we'll try to do something. So regarding this stream, imagine there are multiple people in the past that have done weekly map reviews. They discuss maps that were released that week. What I can do on this channel is either one, give other people access, which I've said several times before. Two, I can host and restream even multiple people that are doing this kind of stuff. I would like it to be in some kind of Discord call. If there's a group of people that want to do this kind of stuff, all the better. This goes for every kind of thing. This map maker spotlight idea, this came from me wanting to feature the maps better from the league. I think this would be great. The only reason I said map maker instead of community spotlight is because I feel like map making is, it's the easiest kind of thing that can really be delved into more consistently. Every now and then we can do community spotlight instead, I'm sure, but I think it all can work together ultimately. So if there are people, this one's definitely devoted to the map makers, so I 100% need people that have map making experience, that are comfortable talking with map makers and not offending them. Not too much anyway. I'll be in the call to offend them. I'll be there to host. We've done weekly races, bingo kind of stuff before. Let's try it in a rotation. Yeah, let's just see what we can do. And a couple other ideas. So if there's anything people are interested in, then, we can make it happen. I'm not going to scroll down too much because then I start to get some names, but I don't know what to do about Duskid TV, because then at that point you just need You need some kind of, well, one, it's a cool idea, sure. You know, it'd be cool, but you need something devoted to it that's running all the time. I can't use my computer for that. I want to use my computer. So yeah, like it's technically possible. I think it'd be kind of boring too, to an extent. You know, like the fad will go away. It's good that it happens a kind of limited amount, seemingly. Feel free to still fill out the form. I'm not gonna check it as often, but that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this long discussion. I'm a little disappointed I didn't get more people in the call, honestly. But I addressed just about everything I wanted to, and as soon as I turn off the stream, I'll probably be like, oh, I could have said something about this as well. I like explaining my reasoning behind a lot of this kind of stuff. I like getting into mechanical discussions regarding this. I like having volunteers that, you know, actually want to talk about this kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely saying people should volunteer. Who wants a raid? I'm just about done here unless people join in.